So the outside edge with the little toe pointing like on two tram lines. Feel how it just opens up across the lower back. So we're no longer clenching the sacrum with our legs and our hips. And that just means that you can turn a little freer. So let's just start with the circle exercise and just try and get it to really turn as far as you can. Gradually releasing even more across the sacrum. So we want to turn enough so that the hand that goes out is pointing towards the back wall before you turn back to draw it in. These two circles we're creating, we'd like them to contain us. So this hand comes round and it feels like it's going around my back, before it comes out here. I mean, obviously this hand can't go behind, but that's the feeling that it's gone behind my back. And then here I catch it again. My spine is at the back of these circles, inside the circles. And then just let it slip into knocking the gates of life. So now you can really feel your spine in the center of your own circle. So as you turn to the right, you're coming into the right foot predominantly. Feel the filling as being something that's rising up the leg. So as I turn here, this leg is filling, and that rising is lifting the heart. But rather than the ground being felt as a hard surface beneath me, upon which I can push or pull, what we're trying to do is get out of the world of force and into the world of energy. And in the world of energy, there's always two complementary energies that balance. Energetically, the ground is two things. It's a sink into which I can pour my own energy by sinking and relaxing. But it is also a source of rising energy, which will come into me if I empty of self. Both happen at the same time, but we want to feel them as being quite distinct. So as I sink into this leg, there's a sense of deflation, almost like a disheartenment. So John had these two terms. He never talked in terms of depression. He talked in terms of disheartenment and enheartenment. As I sink down here, something in me almost collapses and I get a little bit sort of down. But at the same time, something comes up from the ground and lifts me. So the two things are happening and they're balancing each other. But I want to feel the two things in balance rather than just assume it's this sort of steady state. The ground is endlessly generous. It's always willing to accept my shit, what I pour into it, what I let go of. And it's also constantly providing a supply of really fine, beautiful energy, if only you open up to it. Bring it to riding horse. So part of opening up to the ground is just unifying upper and lower. And that just requires not only the sacrum to blend into the legs, but to unclench the sacrum. So no longer holding the sacrum strongly with the hip bones, but just allowing it some wobble. A play side to side largely, that sort of wobble in the sacrum. We've got the up and the down, so unifying the upper and the lower, which is this sort of bounce. But then it's this sort of wobble. So by the time that wobble gets up into the head, it's quite expressive and quite extreme. Just doing the breathing. Feeling the sacrum, unclench the sacrum. We want to unclench all the joints, especially in the lower body, the knees, the hips, the ankles, but particularly the sacrum. And we want the feeling that this is almost happening by itself and we're just observing it. So keep to a yielding mind. So listening rather than speaking, observing rather than imposing. And then let's just start turning with it. So as we open it, just turning to the side and then turning back to the front to close it down. We want the feet to be doing the same as the arms or the hands. So here my 2 feet are pulling towards each other, and here my 2 feet are sort of pushing apart. It's gentle, but it's there. So the pulling the feet together brings the waist back to the front, and then the pushing the feet apart will send it the other way, to the side. And the mind is just listening to the body to see what it wants to do. My mind isn't imposing something that it wants. So as we repeat and repeat the exercise, it gets more and more into listening. To start with, you have to impose something. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't start. Something else would start. So the body knows a lot more than the mind. So if you listen to the body, you'll be learning something. Bringing it back to the front, just look down at the feet and make sure they're still outside edges pointing forwards. So the big toes are quite a way in. So we just have to get used to thinking the outside edge extending into the little toe, so that whenever you put your foot down, it's your little toe that you're pointing with rather than your big toe. It'd be a bit like pointing at things with the little finger instead of the index finger. Okay, now let's just try the heart Qigong, but really allowing it to wriggle. So it's slipping side to side all the time. my sinking and relaxing is like it's pumping up this fine energy from the ground, which my waist directs. So if I'm really relaxed and I want my hands to move because there's waves of energy come up from the ground and into them, directing them, then I have to somehow use the turns to generate it. The hands are never quite in phase because the waist is always slipping from side to side. And as well as the energy whipping up into the hands, we want it to come up into the head. So the head is always just tilting and turning and a lightness that comes from heaviness. So I have to be heavy and sink and relax to start it off. But then a lot of rising energy becomes generated, which I can put to use creatively. And then let's just bring it into riding horse. And just really unclenching across the sacrum. Now let's try the full and empty, but let's try it with the stepping. First of all, let's just go backwards and forwards a few times. Feel the front foot filling. Make sure that little toe is pointing forwards. And then feel the front foot emptying. And then it fills, and that filling just lifts my heart, fills me full of gaiety, joy. So something comes up. But just feel it will only really happen if you can get this sacrum hanging down pendulously. So your spine with the sacrum on the bottom is a bit like a pendulum. And then the back leg, so the back leg fills, and it comes all the way into the upper heart and up into the head, and then it empties. So my sinking stimulates the rising. So my weight sinks down and the ground comes up, and then my weight is removed. Then the ground just flows out. Let's try a little bit with the other foot forwards. To really feel the outside edge and the little toe, you really have to try your best to squeeze the little toe forwards. So you're pulling the little toe away from the toe next to it and just really pushing through it. The key to getting into energy is to be able to visualize. If you can visualize the energy, so I can really see this as something having oozed up from the ground through my body, then the energy will slowly manifest. It won't just happen simply because you're doing the exercise. The mind has to be right. It's a light, imaginative mind. Now let's try it with the stepping. It's exactly the same. We're just going to step backwards and forwards with the left foot. So I just move into the back foot. That just brings the energy up from the ground. And then I'm going to step backwards. So when you step backwards, put the toe down first. and use that pressure with your toe to keep yourself in this leg a little bit longer than you normally do, and squeeze out the little toe. Come into the foot once the little toe has extended as far as it can. And then here, putting the heel down, and again, just squeezing into the heel, and that will push you back into this foot, and it will also extend the little toe, and then you can come into the foot. So that's the way we step now. Just really extending the little toe. Each time you empty the foot, you can extend the little toe, and each time you step with the foot, you can extend the little toe. Big toe down first. A little bit of pressure. You're not really pressuring by using this leg. You're more pressuring by just straightening this leg. So that will keep you in this leg until the little toe has got as long as it can. And then you can just clench with it to bring yourself into the foot. The same here, really. So just really expanding the toes, feeling the little toe. So you'll feel it in the little finger as well, because whatever the little toe does, the little finger will want to do it as well. And then just getting the arms involved. So like the exercise feel it becoming the exercise we started with, the 2-circle exercise, but with a step. So here, this hand is sort of yielding, but the feeling is that it's sneaking around or coming in here and joining this hand. And then this hand here is yielding and adding to this. And now let's try a little bit with the other foot forwards. So first, let's just try the filling and emptying. Trying to get the sacrum hanging heavily as you work. So the sacrum is a bit like the keel of the boat, sort of heavy and inert. And then that enables the two legs to be really energetic and transfer that energy into the spine. Okay, now let's try with the stepping. Big toe down first, really squeeze the little toe out and then into that foot. And then heel down first, squeeze the little toe forwards and then fill the foot and the leg. So Dr. Chi would have loved this because he was always interested in extending his sensitivity beyond the confines of his body. So beyond the skin, so that he could feel the other person's touch before it actually touched. And so he could yield before he was actually contacted. So to get that to extend freely, I really have to turn away from it. It really feels like it's coming out of the back. round here or round here or round here. And that's, of course, exactly where we want it from. So the little toes, little fingers put us in touch with the energetic reality of which Tai Chi is trying to investigate. So let's just bring it back. I'm just trying to line up those edges. Unclench the sacrum. Loosen your grip on yourself. So that's our lightness. So we need the heaviness, we need the discipline, the practice, the pain. But that has to be balanced with the lightness, the humor. And the humor, the lightness foregrounds. That's what you experience. The heaviness can then recede into the background once it's been established. So the difficulty is establishing the heaviness, really. Disciplining yourself to do what needs to be done, rather than indulging yourself by doing what you want to do. So there's a world of difference. One develops soul and one develops ego. And then you can just withdraw that heaviness. It's sort of inside. And what comes to the surface is the lightness, the light. Like that woman in that video clip that was into the pain cave. I mean, I've never seen someone glow like she was glowing. And she was just giggly, she was just laughing and full of humor. But obviously she was a monster. So apparently she's a real game changer. She's just completely changed that sport of endurance running, simply by just being better than everyone else, because she's found a way of using the pain. Nitzan used to say, the only way to deal with the pain is to let it consume you. Because when it comes into the whole body, it's no longer pain, it's just intensity. And that's what we've forgotten how to do. There's nothing in our lives that makes us have to do it. Now let's try a little with a reduced width between the feet. So now I have just one tile instead of the two. But again, getting those outside edges. Rock back into the heel and you can pull the toes off the ground a little bit. Really extend the toes. feel the little toe. And then let's just bring the hands up into our usual shape. Feel the sinking. My body, but especially my sacrum, being pulled down. And this energy coming through the feet from the ground as a consequence of my sinking. Feel the tendency of the sinking to do this, to sort of collapse the spine a little bit and pull the head forwards, and feel the rising, blasting up the front here and almost making you fall backwards. So again, there's an equilibrium between those two tendencies. So there's a sense that I need the weight of the arms out front to balance the tendency to fall backwards with the energy that's rising. Just sort of jogging on the spot, trying to be mindful of those little toes. Unclenching the sacrum. You've got the sacrum under a loose rein. So there's a lot of things to keep the mind on. You just have to scan through the different things, rotate, so the mind can be with the little toes, outside edges pointing forwards. The mind can be with the sacrum that I want to just let loosely hang between my legs, unclenching the sacrum, and then this sort of lilt side to side. And just this feeling of wave after wave. Each time I put my foot on the floor and fill it with my weight, a wave of energy comes up the body. And it's almost intoxicating. And it's difficult, so don't be hard on yourself. Treat everything with a sense of humor. And then let's bring it back into our normal riding horse. So 2 tiles. So 3 of these tiles are 1 meter. In the old apartments, the tiles are feet, 1 foot. Here it's 3 to the meter. Feel the previous exercise still resonating inside the body. So it's bubbly. You feel bubbly. Always think of champagne bubbles for this rising energy that comes up from the ground. Safe and heavy, which will tend to lengthen the lower back, which will encourage the neck to similarly lengthen, and for the top of the head to feel like it's lifting. And now let's take a wider. So now 3 tiles, so 1 meter between my 2 outside edges. The heels feel like they're sort of trying to drift outwards. So the heels are like associated with the hips, the heavy hips, the heavy shoulders. And my toes are more with the energy that's rising, especially the little toes. going down. So the way the feet are coming in a little bit, the big toes, makes going down a bit more difficult. So it needs a lot of practice, because my knees are trying to go out, but my toes are trying to pull round. So what needs to let go in the mind to allow the knees to go out when I go down? And then back into riding horse, feeling the sacrum just hanging heavily. There's this real feeling of the two sides of the body just falling away from each other. A bit like the brain is in two halves, left and right, and there's not very much connecting them, and they can actually be cut in half with a scalpel and you'll still be alive, albeit a little strange. So essentially these two sides falling away, being held together by the Dan Chen. This is where the connectors are between the two sides. So energy can just flow from the leg into the opposite arm, but it comes through the sacrum really, up here, and then branches. So this side is a unit. This side is a unit. But when I use the body energetically from the weighted foot, the energy comes up and I branch it into the opposite hand. And then here. So let's just try just a little bit of this, just feeling it. So as my weight comes into this foot, something rises up the leg. I have to really relax the two hip bones here, hip joints, so the energy can pop across into the other side and extend into my hand. So what do you need to do with the mind to get the energy to come up? I just have to be encouraging. So I see it, I let it come up, and then to pop across here from here, and then up into here. I really have to will it. So it's a mindfulness that isn't simply watching what you're doing physically, but is creating the energy. So it's the imagination, the imaginary. So energy fills that sort of grey area between the imaginary and the real. And then back into. Now let's just try just a bit of this one with the wide stance. Again, with the sense that the circles contain me at the back. My body is inside the circles. and then just back. Feel those two outside edges. The big toes will be almost touching, but the heels will be some distance apart. Don't straighten the legs. They're almost straight. The feeling is that they're bending. They're bending as much as they are being straightened. So I want to feel the pull of gravity upon my sacrum. That is trying to get down through my legs and into the ground. So they're not quite sure why it's called sacrum os, the sacred bone. But they think it's because when you're buried, the sacrum, being as big and as dense as it is the last bone to fully decompose, to disappear. So the sacrum is pulling down, and this beautiful rising energy is just coming up and just infusing me and just filling me full of gaiety and joy. And for that, I need the turn. Otherwise, it just gets a little bit stiff. It's very, very difficult, this stuff, because it's so elusive in a way. And because our minds are so clever, it's quite easy to create the structure with the mind. So that's okay, but you have to realize it's not right. So slowly the mind just softens so that it's the energy that can sustain the posture. So the constant sinking of my sacrum, and then this constant rising up through me. And to keep it going, my mind has to just completely stay with the equilibrium. If my mind wanders, then I've had to lock up and freeze it in order for the mind to do something else. So the mind can speak, but not to itself. It can address the world, it can address the student, it can address God. And in fact, that actually makes it easier to keep it going. But as soon as it starts talking to itself, it's all lost. And then it just has to be retrieved.